The spring flowering bulbs are really easy to plant, but here are a few hints to make it maybe a little bit easier for you. First of all, how deep do you plant the bulbs? I'm going to, by the way, in the front of this bed, plant dwarf tulips, really low growing ones. But usually is what you determine is the diameter of the bulb, or the width of the bulb. And the distance between my thumb and forefinger, for example, is the diameter of the bulb, and it's basically about 1.5 inches. Multiply that by 3, so this bulb should be planted about 4.5 inches deep, or a little bit deeper. Now the Dutch sometimes also measure it this way, which they call to the peak or to the nose of the bulb. And in this particular case, it's very, very similar. So the planting depth, once again, is about 4.5 to 5 inches deep. So either way, you can use. Now, the important thing is to properly prepare the soil. That's the key. Because insects like bulbs. So we'll add a little bit of soil dust, actually bulb dust, to the planting area. And I'll also add a little bit of bulb fertilizer. Now you can use any kind of bulb fertilizer that's not too high in nitrogen. And then mix those in well in the planting hole. And you can see the depth is about, in this particular case, 4.5, maybe 5 inches deep. Now the placement of the bulbs is also very important. See, I like to plant them this way. You can plant them individually if you want. In fact, some people just throw them out over the soil and plant them wherever they land. And in a naturalized planting, that's really a good way to do it. But I like to dig one hole and put a lot of bulbs. That way then, as my wife comes on in springtime and the bulbs are in bloom, she can pick one or two and it doesn't spoil the display in the garden at all. So we put a bulb here, and we'll put one, but so they do not touch each other. We don't want them to touch. And the reason for that is that if they touch, if one of them gets a disease or begins a rot, it can be passed to the other. So by leaving a little bit of space between the bulbs, then it's much, much better. And in this case, I'm going to plant a whole dozen, actually it's 10, excuse me, in this planting hole. I bought these by the tens. All the bulbs are pointed end up. That's really important because sometimes we tend to plant them the wrong way and then we into a little bit of trouble. They still will bloom, but it's pointed end is up on almost all bulbs that you plant into the garden. And then all we need to do is simply pull the soil in over the top. And over this top area then, if you wanted to, is what you could plant is winter flowering pansies or kale or cabbage or something of that nature for a little bit of color during the winter season. It's that easy, and right now is a perfect time to plant out those tulips, daffodils, hyacinths, and crocus.